Hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation. Just a quick housekeeping announcement before I introduce our next speaker. This event may be recorded. Please leave your camera on when possible. Please remain muted unless you are speaking. Please, you can raise your hand if you wish to speak during the presentation. Otherwise, you can leave comments and questions in the chat box. Our next speaker is a wonderful clinician from the Philippines named Nathaniel Chua. He's got a great presentation today about an ACT-consistent form of couples counseling that some of you may not be aware of, but it's gaining a lot of steam in the United States, at least. And there have been presentations about this form of therapy in previous ACBS world conferences. So if Nathaniel, if you're ready, please go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jacob. Now, if I can figure out how to share my screen here, just a moment. Okay, hold on. All right. Okay. All right. So thank you for everyone for coming. My name is Nathaniel Chua, and thank you, Jacob, for that wonderful introduction. I'd like to start by saying a few things about myself. I'm sure all of you don't know anything about me. I'm a counselor here in the Philippines, and I've been working as a therapist since April of 2009 when I finished my graduate studies in counseling. And I have a little website called One Life Only. Goes to show my existential roots. Thank you to Dr. Philip Truscott, a good friend of mine who created this website for me. And I wouldn't be here. Nobody would have known about me unless I had this particular website, right? So by the way, I have counted my slides to 46. So I want to finish this in 45 minutes. So I would have time to ask you for questions regarding my little presentation here. So I'll try to finish each slide within a minute. And if you want to chime in with your question, feel free to do so. But I think because of the length of my presentation, it would help if we could reserve the questions towards the end when I'll probably be able to spare 15 minutes to entertain any questions if there are any. All right. So my background in therapy, in the Philippines, it's hard to survive as a counselor with a focus on a single population. So I remember I only went full-time in 2017. So just about 7 years or 8 years after I graduated, I held down 5 jobs before I went full-time as a counselor. And because of that, I work with a number of populations, basically all possible populations, individuals, couples, and families with different presenting problems. So I got into couples therapy literally by necessity because it was part of my internship requirement. So I was part of a radio broadcasting outfit that offered advice on air and also free counseling sessions. I wasn't part of the broadcasting team. It was run by a counselor and his wife, and I was the one in the back office accepting clients. So you can just imagine the exposure I got to different populations and different concerns. So it was kind of nerve-wracking, but at the same time, very fruitful for my internship year. So of course, it wasn't long before I saw the need for couples, and probably I would say even right now, majority of my clients are couples, because the Philippines is, as you might know, the leading exporter of human capital. Anyway, so this poses a great challenge to couples and their families, and of course to individuals as well. So I'll share, pardon me if I go really fast because I'm hoping to finish all of this in 45 minutes. So I want to share my ACT journey. I'm sure all of you have one. So I was trained, probably like many of you, in psychodynamic psychotherapy, and basically doing specific protocols for specific syndromes. And I'm sure you've heard Stephen Hayes talk about that a lot. Um, well, I thought it was a rather unsustainable because sometimes I find myself buying a whole book just to deal with one client with one issue. So that would be rather expensive for me. So, and then in about 2017, I was while I was doing my usual gardening work, I listened to a podcast. I usually do that, and I heard a couple of British psychologists talk about mindfulness and how effective it is for psychotherapy or for individuals suffering any kind of psychological issues. So I was kind of late in the game, but luckily I did hear the buzz about mindfulness. I have nephews and nieces who talked about their schools requiring them to have a short pause for a mindfulness meditation during their breaks. So I was lugging along a speaker in a stroller bag and doing formal meditations with my clients. And I thought that was kind of like not my game. And some clients would ask me if I do any other thing other than mindfulness, formal mindfulness meditation practices. And I couldn't really answer them because that was my first introduction to mindfulness-based psychotherapy. So as I went through the books, of course, Stephen Hayes and ACT were quoted a lot of times or cited a lot of times. So I got curious what this was. And the first book I got was actually the original ACT book, which was published in 1999. I got to about 5 pages, I think, and I gave up. It's too technical. That was a really dense book. And finally, I got into searching ACT for Dummies uh, online. And lo and behold, the first book that I was suggested was Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life. And that started my ACT journey. And I never thought that all these psychological issues that I shared with my clients could boil down to just one thing, and which is experiential avoidance. So of course, since I work with different populations, next step would be doing ACT for couples. So let me just share first on my training in couples therapy. So I was in my graduate studies. I was trained in emotion focused therapy, and I think I realized that it wasn't really my cup of tea. It was very difficult to go into very deep emotional conversations every time with clients, whatever they come in, whatever they come in with. So sometimes I'd see clients for multiple sessions and ended up running out of ways to get into those deeper emotions. And I thought it was kind of hard to reflect that in everyday couples life. You know, we're not always talking about the hard stuff or the deeply emotional stuff. And then, of course, I turned into the Gottman method because, you know, it was really very popular, at least in my area. I saw a lot of citations about the Gottman method. And I think the primary drawback I saw was that some of my couples would end up fighting about what they learned in therapy. It's not an affront to any of these approaches. It's just probably my style. Maybe I'm not fit for these particular approaches. But until today, I think there are some reasons why I could apply what I learned in EFT and the Gottman method in IBCT. So, of course, when I learned ACT, surprisingly, I actually asked a question directly to Stephen Hayes, and uh, I emailed Dr. Harris, and I got a response from one of his staff. And there's really no approach for couples using ACT. So I ended up with one self-help book and one clinical book. The clinical book was a little bit complicated and talked about schema, so it was pretty hard for me to apply to my couples. So I got into IBCT literally probably by insistence. You know, the first ACT workshop that I went into online was ACT immersion. So that was highly technical for a beginner. So it was in the Philippines we call that nosebleed. You know, I'd listen to Stephen Hayes. I know it's English, but I can't understand his English. Anyway, uh, so there were Facebook Live segments in that workshop, and that was an opportunity. I couldn't follow the modules. I was way behind. I was running way behind, but I made it a point to attend those Facebook Live events wherein we can ask questions directly to Stephen Hayes. And finally, in about a few Facebook Live segments, I was finally able to get Stephen Hayes to answer the question. And to my surprise, again, he didn't say there's an act for couples. He said, well, there's EFT, which I already knew about, and the other one was blah, 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 IBCT. So I couldn't remember the name. It was too long. I said, okay, I remember IBCT. So, well, there's probably just one therapy approach out there that has such a long acronym. Okay. So before I proceed, I'd like to share some acknowledgements. First of all, these were the people in my journey through ACT. Thank you to Stephen Hayes. This is an interview I did with him back in 2021, back when my subscriber base was just 50. And I was inspired by what Stephen Hayes did for me. He did a 2-hour interview with me. And, he said he in one of his podcast interviews that even if there was just one person listening or watching my YouTube channel, he would be there. And thank you, Steve, for walking the talk, and I appreciate your humility. And Dr. Russ Harris and an anonymous donor. When I joined the ACBS in 2019, somebody out there gave me a copy of the Act for Beginners online workshop. And up until today, I still use Dr. Harris's techniques. Thank you to that anonymous donor, and thank you to Dr. Russ Harris. And of course, my two consultants, Dr. Matthew Vilat. Without him, I wouldn't have a solid grounding in RFT. And RFT has really helped me with my ACT work with my clients. And he's also one of those people who are so humble and so easy to reach. And Dr. Blake Evans, who's been my consultant for couples. I never thought I'd be teary-eyed in a consultation session, and that happened with him. He's helped me. I wouldn't have come to this level of mastery about IBCT without him. And of course, this guy over here, the guy who introduced me, Jacob. I'm not the type who likes to toot his own horn. So sometimes I run into some angels out there, and Jacob, you're such an empowering person. He just saw one of my posts in one of the Facebook contextual behavioral, pages or groups, and he got in touch with me, and I succeeded him as a chairperson of the DEI SIG. And thank you, Jacob. I wouldn't be here without you. Nobody would have found out about what I do without your help. And of course, one of the developers of IBCT, Dr. Christensen, and he's also such a gracious person. He answered all my emails. He led me to people like Dr. Blake Evans, and also allowed me to attend one of his workshops. And this was the YouTube interview I did with him. And of course, to ACBS. This is the closest thing to church for me without the dogma. Thank you, ACBS. Thank you for this opportunity. And I hope we continue with the inclusiveness that you have shown throughout my stay here. So let me go to my presentation proper. So what are the challenges to long-term relationships in the Philippines? Well, a lot of them are really self-explanatory if you've done work with couples. So social media, dating apps, long-distance relationships, extended families, shame culture, and the religious culture. Let me just quickly go through one of them, which is dating apps. Well, you know, uh, in ACT, we're always concerned about context or RFT, context sensitivity. And dating apps, if couples meet through a dating app, you can see how that kind of context would probably not it would not have been possible for the couple to meet without the dating app, but at the same time it does develop some sensitivities because it's so easy to download the dating app and start chatting with some other threat to a relationship. So let me go now to IBCT itself, an ACT consistent approach to couples therapy, integrative behavioral couples therapy. So a little introduction. So it is developed by Andrew Christensen, Neil Jacobson, and Brian Doss. If you noticed, I put in bold letters Neil Jacobson's name because he died before, I think, during or before the second trial of the approach. So if you know something about Neil Jacobson, he was part of the team that developed ACT or RFT, but he died before he was able to see the fruition of his work. In 2010, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs adopted IBCT as one of its evidence-based treatments for couples. And for those of you who are not from the US or who are unfamiliar with what the VA is all about, this is the largest single healthcare facility in the United States. So the self-help book, if you're interested in IBCT, it's a Reconcilable Differences, been translated to quite a few languages, as you see. And the research has clearly indicated that it is a promising evidence-based treatment for couples, even for very serious and difficult cases. So I borrowed this term from the Gottmans, the four horsemen of IBCT. Of course, we don't use that term for IBCT. So these are the four: criticisms, unreasonable demands, rejection, and cumulative annoyance. All right. So just take a note of that and see how you can relate it to the the outline that I will share with you about what IBCT is all about. So part one will be rules of the game. This is my little outline here. Main tools in IBCT, a deeper view, the paradox of change, a mindfulness approach to couples therapy. And if I have time, which I doubt I will, I'll talk about the 6 flexibility skills and how IBCT relates to them. So what are the rules of the game? You know, in RFT, we usually talk about rules, right? So in IBCT, we're focused more on functional rather than formal rules. So it's basically rule governed versus contingency shaped change. So in rule governed change, we're focused on making changes in the way the couples trigger their actions, or uh, the triggering actions of the couple or the inactions of the couple. So rule-governed change is a deliberate change as a result of specific training or coaching from the therapist. So therapists would teach them communication skills or problem-solving skills, uh, which I think relates quite a bit to traditional behavioral couples therapy or even the Gottman method. So I'll talk more about contingency shape change later on as we go through my slides. So what are the main tools in IBCT? You'd be surprised. There are just two: empathic joining and unified detachment. So IBCT is basically, the saying less is more. So addition by subtraction. So we really do very little as IBCT therapists in the counseling room. And let me start with empathic joining. So in IBCT, we believe that there is a greater motivation to change when there is emotional connection or empathy. So they've done the studies, and they saw that long-term change can be achieved more with empathy. And if you're familiar with RFT or ACT, we're more about intrinsic motivations to change. So we try to develop context sensitivity, if you're familiar with that in RFT, and contingency shape change, or change due to the change in context. So the emphasis here in IBCT is about emotional acceptance. Dr. Christensen mentioned that in my interview with him. I couldn't understand what he meant by that at first. But now I realized, well, if you're able to open up to your partner or spouse uh, with your more vulnerable emotions, then it comes to a level of emotional acceptance. Sure, of course, we assume that there's no violence or severe verbal abuse in a relationship, because that's a given. If we deal with couples that we assume, or we part of the assessment is to see if there's any kind of threat to the physical or psychological safety of one of the partners. So we put more focus in contingency shape change in IBCT because we think it creates longer lasting change. All right. So contingency shape change comes about spontaneously because there's a change of the context. Uh, everything is a context in ACT, right? Like uh, your spouse is a context, your thoughts are a context, your own history is a context, your physical environment is a context. All right. So let's go now to unified detachment. Okay. So I use a lot of metaphors in my work, also with couples. I'm not sure if I can share some of them. Some of them are borrowed from ACT. So I kind of integrate ACT with IBCT once in a while. I sneak in some of these metaphors at times. So I'd say, like, it's like climbing up a mango tree. We're known for our mangoes, right, here in the Philippines. So, and looking down at your relationship, and having a more objective view of your journey as a couple. And if you've been through one of Russ Harris's workshops, he would mention that, looking at your feelings like a scientist with curiosity. So I'll cite some examples of how we develop unified detachment in IBCT. So the qualities you like about your partner are like a coin with the flip side. So let's say when you were dating, you liked your partner because your partner was always on time. he was never late. And then as you change your context, you get into a long-term living in together or married relationship, then that particular quality can have a flip side. Well, he doesn't like being late, so you argue about, hey, you're not on time, I'm more on time. There's probably something wrong with you. Drawing out benign intentions that are usually unseen by the couple. Let me cite this example. Let's say the couple decides to go to a movie together, and one of the couple is kind of feeling tired, had a rough day at work, but the benign intention is, well, I still want to do this because my partner has been waiting for a long time to watch this movie. So because he couldn't help it, he falls asleep inside the movie, and then the partner notices it, and then when they come out, he couldn't engage in any kind of meaningful conversation about the movie, and then they're off to the races. They're fighting about uh, what happened, what just happened. So these benign intentions are usually not visible. So in my work with couples, I usually say something like, where we're going to make the invisible visible this time. All right. So that's where emotional acceptance comes in. And using humor. All right. So sometimes I say this to my couples. Well, have you been to an anniversary? Let's say a 25th or a golden anniversary. Well, what do you usually hear couples talk about when they face each other and share something about what they have experienced throughout the 25 or 30, 50 years of their relationship? Well, usually there's some humor in it, because humor uh, is a form of acceptance. All right. So that's unified detachment. There are more, but uh, hopefully, once you're more interested, you can go dive into the books uh, about IBCT. As far as I know, I only know of 2 books about IBCT. So the 2 main tools are really for, Jacob, you're going to love this, being more noticing. I read this from Act Matrix. There's only one rule you need to follow in Act, which is being more noticing. So being more noticing of the context of your partner, of the more vulnerable feelings that you don't see most of the time in your arguments, and being more objective. So that this second one is about unified detachment. The first one is about having empathic joining uh, for the couple. So being more objective is unified detachment, having uh, a, sort of like what we say in ACT, we get out of the weeds and climb up a tree and see what's going on down there. So this is one of the critical parts of IBCT. It's called a deeper view. So this gives them a framework of understanding their conflicts and why they get into that self-amplifying loop or self-reinforcing loop of arguments. Uh, D stands for differences, emotional sensitivities, first E. The second E is external stressors. And the last one is patterns of communication. So differences can stand also for compatibilities or similarities. So one of the uh, quotes from a humorist that's included in the book about IBCT is marriage is choosing the right partner with whom to be incompatible. So incompatibility is inevitable. Uh, and usually couples run into trouble because they see their differences as defects. So whatever they find attractive before uh, has become a defect. So it's a sort of a light bulb moment for a lot of couples when they realize that oh, that was something I liked about this guy. Uh, he was a quiet person. I found him mysterious. And of course, once you get married, you found that he's quiet and he does a lot of gaming at home, online gaming, and that can be a source of conflict for a couple. So differences and similarities can be a coin with the flip side. So emotional sensitivities or emotional reactions. Now, this is what we always hear people talk about. It's sort of like a cliche, the emotional baggage that couples bring into a relationship. So this can spring from past history as individuals, so their families of origin, their backgrounds in schooling, their backgrounds at work. So in IBCT, we do get into some of that background information uh, between the clients, because let's say one of them is a marketing executive and the other one is a computer geek. So that provides a context for conflict. So past relationships. So if one partner experienced abuse or maybe infidelity in a previous relationship, that can develop into a sensitivity in the next relationship or the current relationship that they're at. So again, in ACT, we say there's no delete button. So this is what emotional sensitivities are all about. And also their current history in their relationship. So I don't know if I have time, but you can take note of this. I read a book by Joan Dahl and et al. Um, I sometimes use the metaphor of the jogging partner. So if we have time, you can remind me of that metaphor. If you're not aware of it, I'll discuss it here. So current relationship. So if there's been a history in the relationship, let's say they started off when one person was about to end the relationship but was still seeing the other person and disclose this to the partner, of course this will develop into a sensitivity uh, for the other partner, to think that if you can do that to that person, what makes you think, what would make me think that you can't do that for towards me? All right. So I usually ask couples when I talk about external stressors, there are three things that are definite when it comes to life. I don't know. I think I'm making good time, so I'll probably do with some uh, audience participation. Do you think are the three things that are guaranteed in life? Feel free to speak out. I, I don't know how if I can see the chat box from here. I only see my big screen. Anyway, Jacob, if you see anyone putting it in the chat box, let me know. So, of course, we know about any any guesses. What are the three things that are definite in life? We
We
know.
we have people
Huh?
saying change, in-laws, death, and taxes,
Okay.
and again, taxes and death.
Thanks, Jacob. All right. So change happens. So most of the time, couples are not aware of this. Uh, in the ACT book, it's harder to keep a car brand new than just allow it. Oh, I see the chat box now. All right, in-laws. That's okay. Thank you. I never thought about that. Thank you. All right. So change happens. External stressors are anything or anyone outside the couple. So what the external stressors do is they heighten their emotional sensitivities and their differences. All right. So if you have somebody who's very responsible, you like this person because he's not like my ex, who's lazy, who's always drunk, and then you end up working with this partner in Asia. There are a lot of you would encounter a lot of couples who work in the same business together. So when there's a lot of let's say concerns about the business that they run together, then it heightens their differences when one is less anxious than the other person. Okay, so that's the role of external stressors. And then uh, we talk about the patterns of interaction. So anything that can be experienced by the five senses, like Jacob likes to do this with the act matrix. Sorry, Jacob, if I pick on you. You're the only person I know I can pick on here. Anyway, so it's I think the bottom half of the act matrix. Uh, and body language, a roll of the eye, a snub. These are all patterns of communication. Even silence or acts of omission, what they don't do. So when I talk about this in my feedback session with my couples, I use the fire alarm metaphor. And again, I'm not sure if I have time to share all of that, but I can reserve that. You can take note of it and ask me about it for those who don't know what the fire alarm metaphor is. I got it from Nicholas Ternicki's book, ABCs of Human Behavior. So since we are a religious country, Christian at that, uh, I sometimes do mention this, the Serenity Prayer, in my sessions. It's basically knowing we're capable of changing and what we're not capable of changing, but are better off accepting, and being able to distinguish one from the other. So among the deep, all right, analysis, what are those that are most open to change? So there are only four. So as we know in ACT, the gun to your head, you can't change, you can't relax, you can't think happy thoughts, but you can walk like a duck, like Ross Harris would say, right? Or you can be kind to your partner. So these are patterns of communication that are most open to change. External stressors may not be open to change. Why? Because let's say, hey, give up that promotion, or you're not gonna have enough time for me. Well, you give up the emotion and the promotion, then you don't fight about time, but you might fight about that trip you wanted to make. Let's say for Europe, all right? So external stressors may or may not be open to change. In Asia, there's a lot of external stressors about extended family or living with in-laws. So what are better off accepted? Differences and emotional sensitivities. Of course, there are only two left. Okay. So basically, we're not going to change them as people. And I sometimes say this to the couple that I see. Well, as long as it's your differences and your emotional sensitivities, they're all internal. Your partner doesn't see that. It's internal. It's not a fight as long as it's inside. So I'll turn to the paradox of change. I think I'm doing good time. Which one? What is the best way to change, or one of the best ways to change? What do you think? Any? Let me see if I can see the chat box. Oh, sorry. I I gave it up. All right. So change is the brother of acceptance, but it is the younger brother. So when acceptance comes first, it paves the way for change. So as you probably all know, as therapists, a curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And it's true also for couples. So finally, the mindfulness approach. It is, I think, a mindfulness approach to couples therapy, and IBCT does claim that. So it's all about mindfulness in sessions. So in IBCT, we do weekly questionnaires. So these weekly questionnaires focus the discussion. So if you've been through one of the workshops, Russ Harris, he would say something like, "Our minds like to multitask." So couples like to do that in session. They want to talk about the very first time they met. They want to talk about something that happened 2 weeks ago to 20 years ago. So the weekly questionnaires kind of lets them become aware of what happens during those interactions that gives them trouble. So it's not about finding blame or fault. So if you're into your work with couples, then you'll probably notice a lot of them do this when they come into session. And I usually premise my sessions with my clients, and I ask them, uh, and I tell them that, I'll be taking each of your perspectives here, and I hope you don't take it that I'm taking one side or the other. Because if I do that, I won't be doing anything new that you're already doing on your own. So if I do that, I'm just adding one more voice to either one of you. So, and I want to be fair. And if you sense at any time that I'm not being fair, just let me know so we can deal with it. So understanding what happened, again, this is context sensitivity, understanding their deep, and being able to handle them better. So it's not running away from those difficult conversations, but having them and trying to handle them better. So, what is the role of mindfulness? Well, in IBCT, we have foresight mindfulness. I just made this up. Present moment mindfulness, hindsight awareness, or hindsight mindfulness. So in the weekly questionnaires, we ask them about past negative interactions, past positive interactions, or maybe future challenging events. So what this develops in the couple is that they're able to, let's say, be prepared. You know, I remember when I was new to act, uh, I tried to make myself more mindful of moments when I feel like there will be challenges, like when I have to talk to maybe the bank about some kind of wrong transaction or some complaint. Then I have to be mindful of my words, mindful of my values, mindful of my feelings, etc., etc. So present moment mindfulness is for the couple to realize when they're escalating, so they can be able to de-escalate their fights. And hindsight awareness is that part where we have unified detachment, is knowing that they're not going to change. Their differences and sensitivities will not change anytime soon. And noticing that from hindsight and taking a more objective stance. Uh, and noticing that their minds like to create stories. So since I'm Asian, uh, and hopefully a lot of you know about Tai Chi, uh, and I usually say this to my clients: let's slow down here. This is the Tai Chi. Let's do a little bit of Tai Chi. This is a Tai Chi for couples, because I also say this to my clients at the start. Sometimes life is lived in the moment. It's not living in the past or in the future. Uh, it's lived moment by moment, and the reason why you're here is because these moments have accumulated. Remember, cumulative annoyance. These criticisms, these rejections, these unreasonable demands have accumulated in your history as a couple. And how do you uh, handle that better? Because the challenges will never end. They will continue, and as long as they have this thing in between their ears. All right. So that's the end of my presentation, and I still have 1 minute before 11:45. I made good time. All right. So I'm open to questions now, and thank you for staying awake. I don't know what time it is in your time zone. I know Jacob, it's close to 12 midnight, I guess, over there. Let me see. How can I view if there are any chat? Sorry, no encore. I don't think we have time for that. May I know more about the metaphor of jogging partner and fire alarm? Oh, thank you. Voon. Is that Voon? I can't see Voon. Uh, all right. Anyway, so the jogging partner. Let's start with that. I think it was part of the differences and emotional sensitivity slide that I talked about. All right. Uh, this was from the book The Diet Trap by John Dahl and company. Um, it's like the couple is are jogging partners, or is a jogging are jogging partners. All right, the couple are jogging partners. Oh, 9:45. Oh, it's still a good time for Andrea. Anyway, so let's say they're also, besides being jogging partners, they're also training for the Olympics. So they're really competitive. All right. And at the same time, I'm not quoting the exact metaphor in the diet trap. This is my version of it. And then they're also very good friends. They love each other to death. All right. So every Saturday morning they go out and do their jogging together. So it's like killing two birds with one stone. Being able to train, compete against each other, kind of uh, uh, push each other to their limits, and also spending time, connecting with each other as friends. But one day, one of them gets injured. So because of the injury, that friend can no longer run as fast as the other. So that means it's no longer for a dual purpose that they're doing it. They're not training themselves to be better athletes. So the only reason that they would get together on a Saturday morning to jog uh, is to be with one another. So I'd ask the couple, would you still continue jogging with your partner? So that's the metaphor there, that all of us have injuries from the past. So that's the emotional sensitivity part. And the fire alarm is similar to the gun metaphor when I talk about patterns of communication, because there's an assessment uh, period of 4 sessions in IBCT. So when I talk about patterns of communication, if I have time, I would say, okay, if we were all in a room and fire alarm goes off, will we all be surprised or startled or scared or sometimes even mad? Because one of us is familiar with the place and there are usually false alarms. Okay. So I'll ask my couple, well, will we will we get startled? Yes, of course. Can we control that? No. Is it our fault that we're startled? No. If someone was more sensitive to fire alarms, can we blame that person for being more sensitive to fire alarms? No. All right. So that's part one. We don't have any control over it. It's not our fault. It's not our responsibility. Now, but there's a part two. We can uh, panic, jump out the window, or complain all night not able to do anything but, you know, uh, rant about what happened, and it ruins our night, or we can't sleep and there's work tomorrow morning, or we can just calmly check if there's an actual fire, or go out through the fire exits. Well, that's part two. Do we have more control over that? And usually a couple would say yes. Uh, and if we jumped out the window, or we ruined our night just complaining about it, uh, is that partly our responsibility? Yes. So that's how it works for these metaphors work for IBCT and the way we do assessment. So in IBCT, there's the initial session, and there's the individual sessions in between, and the last session is a feedback session. So those are all assessment sessions. And in my experience, some couples do like that because they want some kind of structure in the way they do therapy. And forgot I was gonna say something about I informed the couple at the outset. Mm, anyway, if I do remember, I'll come up with it. Anyway, we still have about 9 minutes left. Thank you for that question, Voon. All right, all right. Hope that was helpful. Uh, yeah, I forgot about what I was gonna say regarding how you prepare your couples uh to the session uh or for IBCT. But if it comes up, I'll let you know. Any other questions?
Yes, hi. I had a
Hey,
question.
hi.
You, hi. You were talking before when you were talking about unified detachment and drawing out the benign intentions that are usually unseen by the couple. And I was wondering if there's a way you use that maybe you can tell us so that the other person doesn't feel like they are like showing off or throwing it in their face, because I've had like individual people in my consultation that when I suggest some sort of way like this to tell their partner that they're doing this effort to go out even though they're tired,
Mhm,
when they come back they're like, no, they got more mad because they feel like
mhm,
they're just being annoyed by going out. I always state the fact that the tone and the way that they say it is very important, but however the other person feels like they're throwing it in their face that they're doing this effort to go out. So maybe if you had any suggestions, that would be great.
Yes. Oh, thank you. That's a very good question. Leah, is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Leah, it's hard to really demonstrate, but basically, it's using your counseling, counseling skills to empathize and kind of go deeper into the emotion, or into the intent that was not visible. uh, it's hard to do without demonstrating it in an actual counseling session. With your counseling skills, you probably know how to go deeper into what the other person is saying. So there are a couple of videos wherein Andrew Christensen himself does the therapy with a heterosexual couple, and there's another person, I forgot his name. um he worked with a gay couple. So it's available on APA, and you'll see how they work with these couples and kind of, let's say, let me see if I can demonstrate it. Okay, let's it's like paraphrasing what the other partner has said. Okay, so you're saying that uh at the beginning of this uh, con this evening, because you're such a shy person growing up in your family, it's not something you normally do, uh in past relationship, as well as with your family, because you're Asian or you're whatever culture you belong to. uh it's hard for you to say no. you really wanted to say no, but it was difficult for you because you didn't want to disappoint your partner. You really wanted to be there for her or him or them. All right. So it's kind of like just doing that, empathizing and paraphrasing what they may not be able to express, but you see it based on what you hear from them at the beginning of the session. And you can actually do that at the very first session. Those two APA videos, if you want them, you can just email me. You saw my website, it's onelifeonly.net. I have an email there, but sometimes my emails go to the spam folder. So if you have WhatsApp, I have a number there on my website. You can chat me up on WhatsApp. I can send you the link to those APA videos. You pay a certain amount and you get 1 year access to those two videos. And it's very, you realize less is more. When I started listening to that or watching that video of Dr. Anderson and that other person, what are they doing? It's just basic counseling skills. It's just empathizing, rephrasing, or sometimes even reframing. Uh, all these things that they're kind of arguing about because what they see are usually the hard emotions. So in IBCT, we try to go into the soft emotions, or from hard disclosure, we go into softer disclosure. All right. So did I answer your question, Leah?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Very good question. Thank you. Appreciate that. At least you were listening. There's one person listening. Jacob, are you listening to me? Just kidding, Jacob. I know you are. Anyway, so anybody else? Go ahead, Jacob. Do your thing. Don't worry about me. I'm just kidding. Anybody else? We still have 4 minutes. Otherwise, sorry, I couldn't get into the 6 flexibility skills. That will take another 30 minutes to an hour, maybe. So hopefully that this helped you. Well, I guess whoever was, I think Eugene, you were the facilitator. Thank you for the smooth transition to this workshop, and thank you, Jacob. I owe you this one. Thank you, Jacob. Thanks for inviting me here. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Leah. Thank you. So
Thank
how
you,
do I
Leah.